The cameras clicked like machine guns as Meghan Markle reached for her husband's hand. What happened next would shake the very foundations of a 1,000-year-old institution. But let me take you back to where it all began. October 2018, the autumn leaves were falling across the grounds of Kensington Palace, but inside the ornate briefing room, the atmosphere was arctic. Meghan sat ramrod straight in a chair that probably cost more than most people's cars, her hands folded perfectly in her lap like she'd been practicing for weeks. She had been. Across from her sat Lady Elizabeth Thornberry, a woman whose family had served the crown since before America was even a dream. Her silver hair was pulled back so tightly it could have been painted on, and her smile had all the warmth of a November morning in Scotland. "Your Royal Highness," Lady Thornberry began, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "tomorrow marks your first official overseas tour as a member of the royal family. Australia, Fiji, Tonga, New Zealand, 16 days, 76 official engagements, 4 million people will see you in person, 4 billion will watch on television." Meghan nodded, her wedding ring catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. 6 months married, and she still wasn't used to the weight of it. Not the ring itself, but everything it represented. The Commonwealth Tour is not just a trip, ma'am. It's a statement. Every gesture, every word, every touch will be scrutinized, analyzed, and remembered for decades. That word hung in the air like smoke. Touch! Lady Thornberry opened a leather-bound folder that looked older than most nations. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Royal couples throughout history, all standing with calculated precision, their bodies never quite connecting, like opposite poles of magnets. "The royal family," she continued, her finger tracing the space between couples in the photos, "maintains a dignified distance in public. Emotions, affection, spontaneous gestures. These are private matters. The crown represents stability, tradition, permanence. Personal feelings, they're rather like underwear, if you'll forgive the comparison. Essential, but never displayed." Meghan's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. In Hollywood, she'd learned to read rooms like scripts. This room was telling her she was the wrong genre entirely. "What about this?" Meghan pulled out her phone, showing a picture of William and Kate from their own tour years earlier. In it, Kate's hand rested gently on William's back during a wreath-laying ceremony. Lady Thornberry's eyes narrowed like a hawk spotting prey. The Duchess of Cambridge had been preparing for royal life since she was 19, ma'am. She understood the nuances, the brief, appropriate moments when such contact is permissible. Translation: "You're not her. You'll never be her." Day 1. Sydney Opera House. The sun was blazing, the crowds were deafening, and Meghan felt like she was drowning in a sea of expectations. Harry walked beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, far enough that they might as well have been on different continents. The schedule was relentless. Meet the Governor-General, inspect the honor guard, shake exactly 847 hands, smile until your cheeks cramped, repeat the same conversation about being delighted to be here, until the words lost all meaning. But the worst part, the space between them, that calculated, measured, institutionalized gap that turned her husband into a stranger. During a visit to a children's hospital in Melbourne, Meghan watched Harry light up as he talked to a 7-year-old boy about his favorite superhero. The child had been in the hospital for months, fighting a battle no child should ever face, and Harry's face transformed with genuine joy and concern. Without thinking, Meghan stepped closer, her shoulder brushing Harry's. For just a moment, they weren't the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. They were a couple, sharing a beautiful moment, connected by love and purpose. The cameras exploded. "Ma'am," the voice belonged to James Crawford, their private secretary, whose job was apparently to monitor the exact distance between royal spouses with scientific precision. He appeared at her elbow like a well-dressed ghost. A word? That evening, in their hotel suite overlooking Sydney Harbour, the conversation Meghan had been dreading finally arrived. Lady Thornberry sat across from them in the sitting room, her face bearing the expression of a parent about to ground a teenager. Harry paced by the windows like a caged lion, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. "The photographs from the hospital visit," Lady Thornberry began, "have generated significant commentary." She laid out a series of newspapers. The headlines screamed everything from touchy royals to Meghan's mistake to breaking protocol. Is love allowed? Social media, she continued, is rather more colorful in its observations. Meghan felt her cheeks burn. She'd learned long ago not to read the comments, but she could imagine them, every gesture dissected, every moment of spontaneous affection turned into evidence of her fundamental unworthiness. "Here's what you need to understand," Lady Thornberry said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, as if speaking state secrets. The royal family isn't about individuals, it's about the institution. Personal feelings, displays of affection, spontaneous emotions, these things suggest that the monarchy is subject to human weakness. And if it's weak, if it's just like everyone else, then why should it exist at all? She leaned forward, her eyes locked on Meghan's. Here, emotions are something to be hidden, not because we don't feel them, but because showing them threatens everything this family has spent 1,000 years building. That night, Meghan stood on the hotel balcony, looking out at the lights of Sydney reflecting on the water. Harry found her there, still in his formal tour clothes, looking as exhausted as she felt. "You okay?" he asked, and for the first time in days, his voice carried no trace of royal formality. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "I don't know how to love you from arm's length." Harry moved closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body, but still careful not to touch. Even here, in private, the rules had gotten under their skin like splinters. "When I was young," Harry said, his voice barely audible, "after Mum died, they taught me that showing emotion was a sign of weakness, that the best way to honor her memory was to lock away everything I felt about losing her." He paused, staring out at the water. "It took me 20 years to realize that was rubbish. That feeling things, showing love, being human, that's not weakness. That's the whole point. Then why does it feel like I'm failing every time I reach for you?" Harry turned to look at her, and in his eyes, she saw the same struggle she felt, the war between duty and desire, between tradition and truth. Because they're asking us to be symbols instead of people, and symbols don't hold hands. Day 12, Nuku'alofa, Tonga, the final official engagement of the Pacific Tour, a traditional ceremony in the ancient Tongan way, where the king and queen would welcome them as family. The heat was oppressive, the ceremony long and formal, but beautiful in its ancient dignity. Meghan watched as Tongan families embraced their children, as couples stood close together, as love was displayed openly and without apology. Then came the moment that would define everything. As they walked toward the ceremonial grounds, a small Tongan girl, maybe 5 years old, broke free from the crowd. She ran straight toward Harry, arms outstretched, calling "Prince, Prince" in accented English. Harry knelt down without hesitation, scooping the child up in a hug that was pure instinct and joy. The little girl giggled and whispered something in his ear that made him laugh, really laugh, for the first time in weeks, and without thinking, without calculating, without measuring the distance or considering the protocol. Meghan stepped forward and put her arm around her husband's shoulders. The three of them formed a perfect picture of spontaneous human connection. Harry kneeling with the child, Meghan's arm curved protectively around them both, all three faces lit with genuine unguarded joy. The cameras captured it all. Absolutely unacceptable. Lady Thornberry's voice cracked like a whip across the hotel suite. The newspapers from London had arrived by special courier, and the headlines were brutal. Meghan's latest breach. Royal protocol in tatters. Is the Duchess out of control? In 20 years of royal service, Lady Thornberry continued, her composure finally showing cracks. I have never seen such a fundamental misunderstanding of what this institution represents. Harry stepped forward, his voice dangerously quiet. That little girl had never seen a member of the royal family before. She ran to us because she was excited, because she felt joy. And you want to turn that into a scandal? I want to preserve a monarchy that has survived civil wars, world wars, and constitutional crises by understanding that its power comes from being above the ordinary messiness of human emotion. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Meghan's heart pounding in her ears. No, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. Its power comes from serving people, from representing the best of what we can be. And the best of what we can be isn't cold, or distant, or afraid to show love. Lady Thornberry's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Your Royal Highness, if you cannot conform to the standards expected of your position, perhaps we need to discuss whether this position is suitable for you at all. The threat hung in the air like a sword. Harry moved then, stepping close enough to Meghan that their shoulders touched. It was a small gesture, barely perceptible, but in that moment it felt like a revolution. The position will adapt, he said quietly, or we'll find a different one. 18 months later, the world watched as Harry and Meghan announced they were stepping back from royal duties. The statement was carefully worded, diplomatically phrased, but everyone who had followed their story knew the truth. They had chosen love over protocol, humanity over tradition, each other over an institution that demanded they love from a distance. The photograph from Tonga, Harry, Meghan, and the little girl locked in spontaneous joy, became one of the most shared images in royal history. Not because it broke protocol, but because it captured something real in a world of carefully constructed performances. Years later, when historians write about the end of the modern monarchy as we knew it, they might point to economic factors, or constitutional crises, or changing social attitudes. But those who were watching closely will remember a different moment. They'll remember a woman who was told that love should be hidden, who was warned that emotions were dangerous, who was asked to choose between being royal and being human, and they'll remember that she chose to be human, because in the end, the most revolutionary act isn't breaking rules, it's refusing to pretend you don't have a heart. Final hook. The question that haunts royal watchers to this day isn't whether Meghan was right or wrong, it's whether an institution that asks people to hide their love for each other can ever truly represent the people it's meant to serve. What do you think? Could the monarchy have survived if it had learned to embrace emotion instead of fearing it? The answer might surprise you.